Lindsay, I'm really excited to have you on the show and talk to you about your journey and your story and just hear about you and your transitions and how you made it all possible. So what I'll have you do is just introduce yourself, what you're doing now, maybe where you're living, where you went to PT school, and then we'll fill in the gaps from there.
Well, I'm Lindsay Walston. I am based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I am now fully transitioned into real estate and have been for just over 3 years now. Originally, I went to physical therapy school at Emory and graduated in 2014, almost 10 years ago. Did a neurologic residency at Emory right after, and then did an orthopedic residency about 2 years after that. So I was working in outpatient private practice when I made that transition.
Yeah, you held some director roles.
Yeah, I did. I built a residency program, a neurologic residency program at the orthopedic practice I was working. So I managed that we had just gotten accreditation and it happened in the midst of all the COVID stuff. So it's really interesting. So did that, ran a neuro coordinator role. So a lot of my job at that outpatient practice was geared towards improving access to care for people with neurologic injuries, just because traditionally it's very university hospital based, which can be really limiting for those people. So I was running, we called them balance centers. And so that was geared towards integrating people with neurologic conditions into traditionally outpatient orthopedic practices.
Very cool. Let's start at the beginning. You graduated from PT school. What was your first role after that? And then how did you go from there leading up into some of these director roles? And I think you're even the APT PT of the year or something.
Yeah, a resident of the year. Yeah. So I graduated in 2014, went straight into the Emory neurologic residency program, which was just being developed and going through accreditation at that time. And I ended up staying at Emory for a year afterwards, working day program and outpatient neurologic rehab. And I, through my husband's company, or not my husband's company, the company my husband worked for, who's also a physical therapist, I got the opportunity they called it a neuro program coordinator role. So through my time at Emory, I got a taste of some of the barriers to care a lot of patients had when trying to seek rehab for neurological injuries. And so a lot of my patients were driving hours and the burden on the caregivers, and it was a really big problem with access to care. And so that is what led me to shift into a more outpatient orthopedic type style clinic, if you can like visualize what that looks like. And then through that transition, as a physical therapist, I felt ill equipped to deal with a lot of the things that come with more chronic neurologic injuries that tend to be more orthopedic in nature. So, tons of chronic pain, tons of orthopedic injuries, maybe from lack of use or a whole gambit of things that was going on. And a lot of my focus and training to that point had been addressing that neurological injury, whereas it might have been the pain that was limiting them. So, about 2 years after that, I decided to pursue an orthopedic residency, graduated from there, and then was working there building the balance centers for a couple years, and then decided to take that model of melding orthopedic and neurologic rehab into creating an outpatient neurologic residency program. So we went through the accreditation process, got accredited, and we got through one class, and that's when I left.
The ball gets dropped.
Yeah. So, in the back of your mind, maybe something isn't where you ultimately want to be, but I convinced myself once I accomplish this next goal, once I get to shift practice locations, get more information, learn more, teach more, build, do everything that I theoretically wanted to do, I would be, it's not necessarily happy, but fulfilled in my career. It's not that I wasn't happy. It's just when you go to work and you spend so much time at work, you want to feel good about it. You want to enjoy going to work every day. And ironically, through accomplishing all of those things and checking all those boxes that I had in my head, if this, then I'll be fulfilled doing what I'm doing. And we got to the end of that and we graduated our first class. And I was just, this is it. I don't know where to go from here. My husband and I sat down and made an exit strategy, but it was all a couple years down the line. We're going to keep doing this for a while. And then COVID happened and I was furloughed and I had a lot more time on my hands. And this could be an opportunity where I can pursue this at the same time. So I did. And then as I got going, I realized this is legitimately what I want to do.
What are you pursuing at this time? You're talking about, I think, working with your husband and pursuing something on the side.
Switching over to real estate. So luckily with COVID, everything transferred online for the training to get my real estate license. And so previously, most of the time you had to go 9 to 5, sit in a class and get the amount of hours that you needed to be able to sit for the real estate exam. But there was a real big push around that time because in-person events just weren't feasible to shift everything online. So it was a totally self-paced course. I was doing that on top of work, 5 a.m. after the kids go to bed, where I could fit it in, we would do it. It just moved a lot faster than I think anyone anticipated. And we ended up making that full jump. I guess it was February of 2021 is when I stepped away completely from physical therapy.
Okay, time out. Let's back up a little bit. I love this story, by the way, because I think it applies to many people in the profession, especially back when you were talking about, okay, if I reach this point, I'll be completely happy and satisfied. And then you did it. And then you did it a few times before you mentioned you got to this point where it was just, I've done everything. I'm still feeling these things. Something needs to change. Can we dive deeper into that? I mean, what was that? What was that like? How did you know for sure that PT was not the field for you and you needed to make a change? And it sounded like this was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, because you tried this a few times and this was the last time that you were going to try it. And then if not, you were going to leave. So can you just walk us through a little bit more about that and what that was like?
I remember the first time I was second guessing myself about the physical therapy profession career choice. And it was right before I transitioned, and it pushed my transition out of the hospital setting because I just was not necessarily burnout, but it's a little bit of fatigue from seeing people struggle and the heavy burden that's put on a lot of our patients. And it's just, you just internalize that. I'm going to fix this problem. I'm going to do what I can do to make this better. And then maybe I won't feel this way. And so that was the initial push. And then I kept convincing myself that I've already invested so much time and money into this. I went to Emory. And my husband did too. So we are deep in student loan debt. Then 2 residency programs, developing the things that I did. It's hard to get past that sunk cost thought process because I've already worked so hard. I've already done so much. Surely, if I just do a little bit more or shift this thing, then it'll be better and I won't have to make this crazy radical left field career change that seemingly probably to everyone else came out of completely left field. But at the end of the day, as we move through each of those landmark moments and nothing changes, you're just convincing yourself that, oh, it's not this, it'll be this. The person that you need to look out for is you have to listen to yourself. It doesn't matter on the surface if you look wildly successful in your career. Theoretically, when you work through what you want your career to look like, if you check every box and you're still not where you know in the back of your mind, you know that you're not where you want to be, at some point, you got to step away. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. That last push where I literally checked every box that I ever thought, that residency program, graduating that residency class, getting accredited, doing all that stuff. If not now, it's never going to be this way. And so that was the final push. But there's a lot of points where you convince yourself, you just push the landmark down the road a little bit. And we're almost there. It'll be fine. I've already invested a lot of time and resources here, and I got to see this through. So where your breaking point is essentially and how far you're willing to push it. Because
For sure. I love this because it's so real. And I completely agree with everything that you said. And I think there's two big things for sure. And you talk about the sunken cost fallacy, which has come up before. And another thing is we're really comfortable and secure in the jobs that we have, even if we may not necessarily like it or really believe in the back of our minds that this is something that's good for me. But I think it's that security, that familiarity, and trying to imagine shifting into something completely different is a huge, unpredictable, uncertain task. But I think it can be done. I mean, I know it can be done. Everybody on the show's talked about it and they talked about their journey and they've made it happen and it's possible, and that's a big part of having these conversations and getting this stuff out there is to show that it is possible and people can do it. And even if there is a sunken cost fallacy, well, Would you rather stay in the career that you're in now and not be happy for the rest of your life, or shift and take maybe a year or 2, maybe depends on what you wanna do, to get into a career that you like, and, hey, the rest is history. And something that you point out, which is really important as well, is if you're not satisfied with your primary job, or there's that thing in the back of your mind that's just, "This isn't right for you," at some point along the line, it's gonna come out in other aspects of your life. And that's something that you really pointed out, and that's very true. So I'm glad we're having all these conversations and talking about all this. I love it.
I mean, I'm not a big find your passion type thing, but you should enjoy what you do on a daily basis. I don't think that you have to love it. There's going to be pros and cons to any job. You're not going to love every day of any job that you have, but on the whole, you doing something you enjoy, doing something that you want to continue to learn more about and you would like to invest time in to grow your expertise is so critical. We see the burnout rates in healthcare specifically that are just through the roof. And it's a lot of fatigue from everything that's been going on from a healthcare perspective, and then just all the struggles that the physical therapy profession as a whole is going through right now. But the thing is, from a sunk cost perspective, it never gets any easier. You keep loading on the time and investment. So at some point, it becomes harder and harder to walk away, I think, because you keep sinking more and more resources or time or whatever into it. So, I mean, it is just taking the leap and plan as best you can. Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah, I completely agree. Out of everything, when you were at that point where you knew you wanted to change, I think you guys started having a plan for a general direction that you were going to change, and then you were going to plan it all out. And then COVID, I think, fast tracked all that. Did you try other things, or were you testing out different other career options or positions? Or was it just you knew for sure that you wanted to do something in real estate, and here's the backstory behind it? Can you walk us through that?
I knew for sure I wanted to do real estate. That was something that I had that in the back of my mind since we bought our first home. That was the initial push. I think that I could do this and I could do it better than our personal experience because we had our first time home buying experience. It was one of those things that there can be a negative perception from the real estate field. What do you need a real estate agent for? We were doing everything new. This was our first time doing everything. We were investing. I mean, it was not a lot of money probably to somebody that sells luxury real estate, but it was $250,000 at the time. How often do you make $250,000 investment? And they're just sign here, good luck. I mean, it was no guidance, no education, no training, no nothing. And it was such a stressful process that the day before closing, I wanted to back out of buying this house. And that was my first experience with real estate. This is what most people's largest investment is their home. And there's a lot of barriers just to getting into a home, specifically for first time home buyers for a lot of reasons. People need someone to guide them through the process, to educate and teach and train and just reassure and walk them through the process that genuinely cares about them. And so that was my initial thought. And then also, my tastes always exceed my budget. And so we bought this fixer upper because that's what we could afford. We both went to Emory. We had a whole bunch of student loans. So we weren't buying this nice house. We bought this nasty, smelled like cat urine. It was straight out of it 1982. We started fixing it up, doing a lot of work to it, and then we would sell it. And so every 2 years we would buy a house, live in it, fix it up, sell it. And so that was a secondary experience to real estate while all the physical therapy stuff was going on. And it allowed us to go from this dinky, nasty $250,000 home to one now that we're in is a 7-figure home. And it wasn't because we had such a huge increase in salaries, because we made good investments and bought and sold and fixed up over time. So I think being able to guide somebody that wants to do that through that process and know that it's possible. You don't have to have millions of dollars to be able to get into a home. There's ways we can do it. I can teach people how to get to their goal wherever their starting place is.
For sure. I'd like to talk to you about 2 different sides of the home business. I'm curious about, the side where you are now as a realtor, and then also, I think we'll save this question for later. What are some things to look out for as a first-time home buyer? And I don't see any better person to ask than you, and I have never bought a home, so I am curious about this as well. But let's start with the career side, and you have to take this licensing exam. What are some things after that? And let's say there's some people interested in maybe doing what you've done. Can you Tell them maybe some of the steps, some of the processes, and the reality of what it is that they're getting into?
The barrier to entry for real estate is pretty low, which is an issue. But so you really only have to take a 2 week, 8 hour, 9 hour course 5 days a week. You have to get a certain number of hours to be able to sit for an exam. And the exam is very much like the PT board exam. It was a lot of rote memorization of things that you probably won't actually ever use. It's a multiple choice test. I can only spit out so many times how many square feet are in an acre. So a lot of it is studying to take the test. You get your pass your exam. That's the initial barrier. And then you have your license, you go put your license with a broker.
What's a broker and how do they fit into this? If you can give us a crash course here.
So basically you sit for your exam, you have to get a certain number of hours in training, sit for your exam, pass your board, your license, and you become a real estate salesperson. In PT terms, it's being a PTA. You are able to make decisions, but you have somebody over with a supervisor that you go to if you have questions. There's somebody that's over you and making sure that everything is where it should be. You function autonomously, which is really nice, but you are a part of a brokerage or essentially a real estate company. And then there's options to take advanced training to become a broker if that's what you choose to do. And then you can act fully independently. You can open your own brokerage. You can do a lot more things without that direct supervision. But as a salesperson, which is what my license is, I can go meet with clients, write offers, do all the list houses, do all of that stuff with the license that I have. But there's a tier above that as well.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, if you have the license to sell, you need to partner with a broker in order to basically complete all of the services from A to Z, right? Okay. And if
Yep.
you want to do your own thing, you have to go and finish the brokerage licensing and stuff. So, how do you know who to partner with or what brokerage to go with? How do you manage all that?
You interview just like you would for any other job. I mean, a lot of it depends on what your goals are. My focus was more on the luxury real estate companies and brands, not necessarily because I exclusively sell luxury real estate, but the bar is so high with groups like that. You want to surround yourself with the people that have been doing this for a really long time, that are wildly successful. You want to find somebody that can mentor you and you can learn from, and you surround yourself with people that are very successful and also very serious about their job. There's a lot of people that do it part-time. There's a lot of people that maybe do it on the side that are still working. I wanted to get into a group that I knew was going to have the highest quality of training. There's a lot of different options. So it just depends on what you're looking for as a real estate agent. That was my specific desire, but a lot of the companies have different pros and cons.
Sounds good. When somebody's starting out with this, do they have a lot of structure, guidance, somebody over them to tell them what to do, or
Nope, you have to create your structure. So that's the other thing. When you're in a salary job, a lot of people have some autonomy. You might have a little bit of control of your schedule, but you have general set expectations about what your hours are, how much money you're going to make. Somebody's following up to make sure you did what you said you were going to do or what you're supposed to be doing. In the independent contractor world, which is how real estate agents function, it's on you. And you can create accountability through mentorship and through your broker potentially. But otherwise, your day-to-day schedule, your how you advance, how you train yourself, how you build your career is very much on you. It can be difficult to go from a hyper structured environment to something where it's just, I don't know, figure it out. There's not necessarily a ton of built-in guidance. You have to create it for yourself through your environment and through your own willingness to adhere to a schedule.
that sounds like a pretty big jump and a challenge for sure that people would have to overcome. How did you go about overcoming this, or what are some things that really helped you get through this transition?
I think one of the big whys, other than the one I shared of pursuing a career in real estate, is the autonomy. So I was honestly really seeking that. I'm a very structured person baseline. So that's how I function for the most part. So having a career like that, it was something that I liked to be able to do because it gave me the freedom to create my own schedule, build my own client database, do all that stuff. but you have to be very intentional about how you do it, because if you decide you want to do something else or skip what you told yourself you were going to do, there's nobody falling behind you to make sure you did it. So there's no accountability built in. You have to create your own.
For sure. Makes sense. Just curious, was there a mentor that you found or a coach or maybe through your brokerage or some sort of groups online that really helped you get all this together and get more of a structure?
So it's funny. She knows that I tell the story because she tells it too. My patient was actually the person that I call, like, it was a former patient that I was working with when I was in clinical care, who I knew was in real estate. And you spend so much time with your patient. So you just get talking and you build a relationship. And so she was the first person that I called as, hey, I'm sitting for my real estate license. Help, what do I do? And so she helped me set up interviews with the company that she worked for and helped guide me through the process. And she helped pave the way to get me where I wanted to go. We all have those connections. So it's just being able to tap into them.
What is your day-to-day life like or your week, your structures? You've been talking about a lot of autonomy. So can you share with us what that's like?
Sure, it's a little bit all over the place. Real estate theoretically is a super flexible job, except for the fact that you're working around other people's schedules. So I work a lot of nights and weekends, which can bleed over into everything else. And so my Thursday through Sunday tend to be my busiest time. I have to be very intentional about building in a break into what used to be my traditional work week. I'm an early morning person, so I usually get up early, get what I need to get done personally done, and then sit down and do some admin work. And then my afternoons, evenings, showings and interacting with clients and being out and moving in the community. It's the polar opposite of a traditional clinical role. The bulk of your work is 9 to 5 with some variation in that, but it's a ton of nights and weekends.
Let's go back over to the customer, the buying, purchasing a home side of things. What are some things that you see that's pretty common for first time buyers that would be good to share with those that are interested in buying a first home? That would be good to know what they're getting into or ahead of time.
I think if you are thinking about buying a home in the next 6 months to a year, it's good to start a little bit earlier than you think you need to. A lot of times people come to me and they're, I'm ready to buy tomorrow. That's fine. But there's a lot of background work that can make the process a lot smoother for people that doesn't usually get considered. Because you think about, I'm going to go shopping for a house, I'm going to put an offer in, and then I'm going to move in. And there's a build up time period to that to make sure everything tracks smoothly, being able to get everything in line, make sure your budget is what you think it is, talking to people, interviewing different agents, different lenders. There's a lot of legwork that is required before you actually get to the part of where you're walking through doors and trying to pick a house. And I think the most stressful thing about the process can be the sprint that's required if you haven't done that initial legwork. So I usually recommend people start interacting and engaging 6 months to a year before they actually think that they're going to buy a house, because it gives you time, it gives you the ability to do research. It allows you to really sit down and think about what you're looking for and what your priorities are, which really cuts down on that buyer's remorse of having to make a rash decision. Give yourself time, more time than you think you need, to ease into the home buying process so you have the best real estate agent, you have the best lender, you're getting the best rate, you're choosing the area that fits you the best instead of just jumping in with both feet and just running. That's where I see a lot more of the regret, is people that just go for it. That, and knowing that you have a choice, you should interview multiple real estate agents, you should interview multiple lenders. You want to be sure that you like the people that you are working with, because we will be spending a lot of time together. So making sure that you genuinely feel the people that you are working with are on your team and not there to just push you down the road as fast as they can so they can cash out and move on to the next one.
For sure. Does a lot of the legwork have to be done by the home buyer? And it's the realtor's job to make sure that this checklist is done by the buyer? Or what is that relationship like? Does the realtor do some of the legwork too? Or
Everybody works differently. There's some buyers that want to be a little bit more hands off, and they just want to know where to go, what to do to set themselves up for the process. And there's other people that want to be more involved and to make every decision. So it just depends on the person, to be honest. It's in the best environment, it's typically a little bit of back and forth dynamic. I can give suggestions, but it's good to talk to your friends, talk to your family members, get your own recommendations too, so that you feel you've got a wide scope of opinions to move forward with the best. To me, my job is to help facilitate that and help guide through each individual step so that it's a nice, smooth process. So just making sure we're not skipping steps, making sure everyone is getting what they need, guiding them through that process so that it's as enjoyable as spending that much money can be.
Sounds good. What have you realized from this journey, from graduating PT school to getting to where you are now? Life awareness maybe have you gained, or what have you realized from all of this that you maybe didn't know before?
My biggest takeaway point from this whole experience was that what matters most is you and those people that are immediately close. I had a lot of opinions about what I was doing and why. There are a lot of people that were thrown off and had thought. But at the end of the day, who cares what they think? I think it's my biggest take home point. People can have opinions and not understand why you're doing what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live the life that you're living. And if you're genuinely not happy doing something, Bob over there, who thinks you should keep doing it, shouldn't be the one that gets to say in that. So if you do a 180 and do something completely unrelated to physical therapy after you've spent who knows how much on school and all your training, there will be people that have some things to say, but they're not coming home with you. Genuinely, you want to do what's best for you and the people that immediately surround you, like your family. Plug your ears and do what's best, and they'll chill out eventually. But it's hard to listen to people. Oh, real estate? Really? I don't know how many times I got that. Who gets a doctorate and then turns around and goes into a career that requires a GED? Who does that? Who cares? And I think that things that I took from physical therapy that I didn't realize would be assets in the profession that I have now, because you don't generally think patient care, physical therapy, real estate really work together. You can apply it in ways that you maybe didn't expect. So a lot of my job is customer service, which is what you do every day at the clinic. So I think that it doesn't matter what other people think. And you'll be surprised at how the skills that you have actually translate pretty well.
For sure. I'm glad we transitioned to that, because that was my follow-up question was, what have you learned from PT that applies to your real estate stuff?
It's just customer service. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear it all the time. Those interpersonal skills that we learn in the health profession are really valuable anywhere else in whatever career you want to go down. So absolutely. On Bob, what I'll say about the Bobs out there is, if you're doing something that threatens a mindset of people or a belief system of people, they are likely to say those things because it goes against their reality and their framework and their mindset, right? And I think it's a natural human thing. Okay. I'm not saying Bob's less than. I just think it's a human instinct or how we are. And if they see you going out and doing something that they said that they couldn't do, surely they're going to have some internal conflict. There's going to be something going on there. So I think you're 100% right about it's so important to just let Bob you can go do whatever you want to do over there. I'm going to go do what's best for me over here and ignore those people. What really matters is you, number one, and then your family and those that are close to you and who you want to build a life with. Completely agree. Do you have any book recommendations for anybody? It can be about anything. It can be about real estate. It can be about career transition. It can be about life.
I'm a big Mel Robbins fan. 5 Second Rule. I really like those types of books, mostly audiobooks because I drive all the time. But the 5 Second Rule was one of my favorites. It was related to change, essentially. Your brain will try and stop you from doing something that's different. And you have to take action before your brain says, I don't know, that's a good idea. And so it's counting down. I think the whole idea with her is that she was in a state of depression and she was just trying to get out of bed in the morning, and she watched a NASA launch and it was counting down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take action before your brain stops you, before you sit there and think of all the reasons why you shouldn't do what you inherently know that you need to. I think that was one of my favorites. I also really I'm currently reading Never Split the Difference.
I can't remember his name, but I think wasn't he an ex-FBI negotiator? Yeah, I'm dipping into that some now too. I love it.
The reason I like that book is you don't realize how much of your life is a negotiation, how to engage and get what you're looking for, but not in a steamroll way. In any profession, the world is small. If you burn bridges, it's going to come back to you. But you also want a win from a professional perspective. I want to win for my client, but there is a way to do that that doesn't just steamroll others. So, because you're going to have to work with them again. And if you get that reputation of just steamrolling everyone, people will start to hide from you. I've read that one now, I think 2 or 3 times. That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, I really dig it. I just opened it up and started looking at it in the middle of the book, and I was, this is brilliant. Awesome. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people are looking to reach out and connect with you, and, let's say they maybe want to buy a house from you, where are you located? Where are you at if they want to buy a house in your area?
So I'm about 30 minutes north of Atlanta. I work all around the Atlanta area. Instagram's probably my number one, and it's just my first name and last name. But call, text, email, even if you're not in the Atlanta area, I've called and interviewed agents all over the country for my friends that are moving to Texas or California. So if you need help finding someone, I'm happy to vet people for you also. So that is something that I do for my friends all the time.
And we'll include all the links and stuff in the show notes too, so they can reach you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your journey and story with us.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.